locked on Gov. Let's get it. I wonder who's going to show up. He'll be the first person to enter the live. I wonder who it'll be. I'm curious. I wonder. I think I might just go and then just post it, and you guys can work with the recording of my live. How about that? So, and though I did this live, it's not quite You're Here live, but we'll see how it works out. All right. Okay, so I uploaded the survival guide for quiz 2 to Instagram and to TikTok, so you guys should see it and check that out for me. Like it. Make sure you like and share it as much as possible, and get it to the rest of your classmates who might need it. All right, so let's go through it. So the core themes for quiz 2, right? Topic 1.4 and 1.5 is a confederation to the U.S. Constitution and everything in between, like Shays Rebellion and the compromises at the Constitutional Convention. So let's start with the core themes here. Articles of Confederation. Weak sauce, super weak sauce. The central government had a Congress. It was just one Congress, unicameral, just one House, 13 delegates, one delegate per state. Not a lot of power, had some power, just not very strong. Could not tax, could not enforce laws because there was no president, no army, could not raise an army or draft an army, and just straight vibes. States had all the power. Next up, Constitution. So the U.S. Constitution, got to know that. That is the structure. The second Constitution, the second government, it is the structure, the house, the windows, doors, frames of the building, right, in which government lives and operates. It is limited, separated, and balanced through checks. So think of the Constitution as the fixer of the first Articles of Confederation, the super weak one. It's a stronger centralized government. It is federalism, so that is the sharing of power between the national and state governments, right? They share it. It's like a marble cake today. So cooperative federalism is how it operates, and that's mostly done through like money, grants, and funding, and incentivizing the states by holding money over their heads and getting them to cooperate. So cooperative federalism. And initially started off as dual federalism, where we had a layered cake, not a marble swirled cake, but layered. And each level of government had its own powers out and pretty much didn't blend or mix at all. And think of the Constitution as the structure, the checks, the balances, the game plan, the blueprint. It lays out exactly the term limits and how old you have to be and all the requirements to be in government, and then also what the powers of each branch will have, how the states still have rights, how to amend the Constitution, right? All that's in there, as well as the Bill of Rights eventually, and then the other amendments, the other 17. So 27 amendments altogether. That's at the very end. Okay, and then you have the compromises. The compromises, got to know them. It's the glue. Right? It's everyone gave up something in this constitutional convention in 1787. Everybody gave up something. Everybody had to compromise and make deals on something. And yes, there were contradictions, especially the 3/5 compromise and the slave trade compromise. Those two alone, massive contradictions that really makes me wonder, like, what were they thinking? You know, was money and greed really that powerful to drive you to make a decision that completely compromises a nation who's supposed to be built on all men are equal, given by their creator, unalienable rights of life, liberty, and property, happiness, right? I mean, gosh, to just go completely away from that and to allow the 3/5 compromise and to continue the international slave trade for 20 more years is just, I don't know. I think I would have walked out, man. I don't think I would have compromised. I think my soul and the nation's soul, yours, all of our souls matter more than money and property. Humans can't be owned. All right, so let's keep going. The compromise. You have the Great Compromise or the Connecticut Compromise. Roger Sherman from Connecticut came in like the guidance counselor of we didn't ask for but needed. We had the Virginia plan, New Jersey plan, big state, small state. Virginia plan wanted everything based on population size and a bicameral legislature, so they were okay with 2 houses. And a New Jersey plan wanted a unicameral legislature with all equal representation, regardless of how large you were and how many people lived within your state boundaries. The Great Compromise combined the two, creating the House of Representatives, the lower house, based on population size. There's 435 members. The largest states have more seats. We have 4. We have 2.9 million citizens. We have 4 seats. California has way more. Texas, Florida, New York, Pennsylvania, these other states, massive. And they have way more power in this hot, chaotic, hot teacup of a House of Representatives designed to get legislature or the lawmaking process going, to give it energy and to give it some fire. And then you have the Senate, which would then basically be the compromise there for the New Jersey plan, right? So for the small states, every state gets 2 representatives. There's 50 states, 100 senators, 2 per state. And those senators represent the entire state. Their constituents, the people that vote for them, are the entire state. In the House of Reps, their constituents is just their district. So for us, the bottom counties of Mississippi, just the bottom counties, we elected Mike Ezel to go to the House of Representatives to make decisions for us, right, on our behalf. That's all we voted for. We don't vote for the other representatives, the other 3. That's done in the other districts. All right, so we ended up on a bicameral legislature, 1 on equal representation, the upper, the Senate, calm, collected, professional. Very few rules in the Senate because they are supposed to be calm, cool, and professional. You can filibuster and yap nonstop if you're from the minority political party and you want to stop a bill from passing. Yap, yap, yap until somebody amends it and actually listens to you and does what you want, or it kills the bill. Or you just get tired of yapping and eventually stop. Now, they can pass a cloture rule, which would lower the vote from, if I'm not mistaken, 67 out of 100, which is needed to stop a filibuster. A cloture rule would drop it to 60, which would make it easier to stop a filibuster, if I'm not mistaken on those numbers there. Yeah, and then there's also like something like called a nuclear option. And a nuclear option would be just like the last resort there where, we don't have to get, I don't want to confuse you there. So forget about that part. All right, we'll come back to it. But let's go ahead and shift to the House. House has a lot more rules. They have actually something called the House Rules Committee, which designs the rules for debate and the time limits and how it's going to happen. Because again, the House is designed to be hot, chaotic, and messy. And so the Rules Committee's job is to keep it more organized. The Senate does not have the House Rules Committee, right? They do not have that because it is meant to be more professional and less rules, right? Think of it as the saucer of a teacup. It cools it off. So pour some of the hot tea from the cup into the saucer. And that saucer then, it is spreading the tea out, right, in heat exchange, thermodynamics, right, what entropy and entropy, right? Eventually that will cool much faster and you can drink from it and enjoy the tea. All right, so let's move on. 3/5 compromise. 3/5 compromise. That was an agreement between the northern states and the slave states. Slave states wanted to count, like Virginia, wanted to count their slaves as 3/5 of representation. So they would count as 3/5 of people towards representation in the House of Representatives. And they were willing to walk away if this was not accepted. So the northern states had to accept and negotiate and make some tough compromises. The thing that happened, though, was if they were going to count slaves as 3/5 of a person, which is wild to me that you can they passed that, they would also increase the amount of taxes placed on that state. So to get more representation means you would pay more taxes also. So there was some more money coming in. And then you have the slave trade compromise, which banned or did not allow the banning or shutting down of the international slave trade until 1808, 20 years after this Constitution would be implemented. Again, slave states fighting against northern states over the institution of slavery, and for them to not walk away, and for this deal to happen, the northern states and those who were abolitionists had to make some tough compromises that are quite literally contradictions to our natural rights and to life, liberty, pursuit of happiness, to all men are created equal, right? What Thomas Jefferson wrote based off of John Locke and the Declaration of Independence. Also, you have the Electoral College, which is basically an elite democracy filter on us, the people, we the people. It is a participatory filter, right? They were worried about mob rule, worried about participatory democracy, pure democracy. They were worried about Americans not knowing who to vote for, not knowing what they were doing, and making the wrong decisions. Think of the time period. Communication, very slow. Horse, feet, paper. It was not cell phone and emails and Wi-Fi, all right? And so they said, we need a filter. And this Electoral College would allow that by having the electors of each state make the final say on who the states vote for president. And so this is how we elect the president. And I'll explain that in a little bit further in later units, the presidential unit. But think of the Electoral College as this. How do we figure out who wins? You got to get to, president has to get to 270 electoral votes to win the presidency. How do we get there, right? So each state has a certain number of points or votes, electoral votes. Mississippi has 6. Well, how did I get there, right? We have 4 representatives in our House of Reps. We have 2 senators. Add it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 electoral votes is what we get. Now, places like California, way more people, right? And what is their population now? 36 million? It might be even more than that. I don't want to tell you wrong. It's been a while since I've looked at California's population size, but I know they are losing population. They've lost seats in the House this past census. So every 10 years, we recount the population. And they have a bunch of representatives, and they have more power in the House of Reps, but they still only get 2 senators, equal rep. Thank you, New Jersey plan, right? And the Great Compromise eventually. So they actually have a lot more votes. So Kamala Harris in 2024, last year's election in November, she won California, got a large chunk of votes. However, President Trump won all the swing states. So Florida, Pennsylvania, Ohio, and now Ohio goes, the nation goes, potentially, right? Texas and all these other big states swung his way and gave him the votes he needed. And Mississippi, our 6, went to Trump as well. And in these states, the winner-take-all system is in effect. So that means, like in Mississippi, if Trump won 51% of our popular vote, which he did, he won over that, he would get all 6 votes. Only 2 states do not do the winner-take-all system, Nebraska and Maine, where they can split their elector votes based on congressional districts. So Trump could win 4 of Nebraska's while Harris might win 1. It actually can do that, just 2 of them. All right, let's move on. Okay, so quickly, let's do a speed round. So really fast speed round. So y'all just lock in. We're almost done. This is everything you need to know. Stick with me, lock in. Shays' Rebellion equaled wake-up call. No national army to stop the chaos. Articles could not tax. So what did that mean? That Congress, that only branch of like that unitary, not unitary, let me call it unicameral. That unicameral Congress was broke. You got me? Broke. All right. And so let's move on. No judiciary. So no enforcement of laws on states, but also states were wilding out, right? So if there was a dispute from one state to the next, New York versus New Jersey, They had to handle it themselves. There was no national court system or federal court system to handle those disputes in a legitimate way. So think of like the ships on rivers, right? Crossing state boundaries, right? A state could block that or tax that. And that would have been a court issue, but we did not have a court. The Great Compromise equaled the House based on population size, the Senate based on equal representation. And think of that teacup saucer analogy, right? The House is hot, chaotic debates, energy in the legislative part of the lawmaking process, fire in the lawmaking process. They want it to go. They want it to be the voice of the people, representing the people, right? And to act fast. And the saucer, the Senate, is supposed to be cool, calm, professional, and slow down that heat somewhat and to really sift through what needs to get passed as a bill into law and sent to the president. All right, the Three-Fifths Compromise equaled more seats plus more taxes for slave states. Slave trade compromise equaled delay on ending the international slave trade. Basically kick that can down the road to the next generation because they weren't able to negotiate ending it at the Constitutional Convention, so they had to compromise on kicking that issue down the road. The Electoral College. The founding fathers feared a direct popular vote. They feared pure democracy, right? They thought it would be mob rule. And so they created an elite filter of our votes to just double check to make sure we weren't tripping. All right, No Child Left Behind. That was the federal government offering money, funding for test scores, for putting more state tests in schools. And if your children or kids achieve better test scores, your state or your school education program gets more funding. States should be in charge of education, not the federal government. That's why President Trump has deregulated the Department of Education. He has devolved those powers back to the state because the Constitution does not allow the federal government that power. It's reserved for the states. But this act, this No Child Left Behind Act, signed into law by George W. Bush, I believe in 2002, 2003, one of those years, right? Backfired, right? Schools were underfunded because they weren't hitting the mark. It was leading to students with major test anxiety, burnout by teachers, and overall just a lot of headaches, kind of like Common Core. And then you have the Patriot Act. Privacy versus security, which one is it? After 9/11, those terrorists who hijacked planes were trained here for 18 months in America. Hijacked planes, destroyed the trade centers, ran them into other buildings. And so they said, forget the Fourth Amendment of your Bill of Rights. No illegal search or seizure of your property without a warrant, right? Forget that, because we need to make sure this doesn't happen again. These terrorists do not happen again, these terrorist attacks. So again, privacy or security, a big expanding of federal government into our civil liberties, right? Our natural rights. Okay, let's keep going. So let's look at it, right? So there's been some shifts of power from the Articles of Confederation to the Constitution. And what are those shifts? Initially, articles could not tax. Congress did not have the bag. The Constitution, in Article 1, Section 8 of Article 1, it's a portion in there, Article 1, Section 8, which establishes the legislative branch, Congress, gives Congress the power to tax the people. All tax bills, all money bills must originate in the House of Representatives because it's the most representative of the two. And they felt like those representatives represented the people better. So there you go. That's why all taxes start there. Executive. AOC, Articles of Confederation, had no POTUS, no executive. This new one would have one who could respond to crises, could shut down rebellions, could lead the army, could enforce the laws, the sword that we needed, George Washington. Courts, AOC, Articles of Confederation, had no court system. States were beefing, whiling. Land disputes. Trade disputes, right? So what did we create in this Constitution, the new one? SCOTUS, the Supreme Court, federal courts, Supreme Court, Court of Appeals, district courts, the federal court system. The Supreme Court has original jurisdiction and appellate jurisdiction. They can pull up anything they want. Original, look at it first. But they can also look at court decisions that are on appeal, so that people can appeal up to the Supreme Court as well if they want. So Supreme Court is the highest court in the land. Powerful, all right, but also meant to protect us, to be our shield from the other two branches. All right, military, AOC, Articles of Confederation, could not draft an army, couldn't even tax to pay for one. So new one, National Army, is allowed, and they can draft you. You can be drafted, boys. Trade, all right, so Articles of Confederation, states controlled all their trade. They could block or tax trade from other states. This new Constitution, the Commerce Clause gives this new Congress, one of the branches of this new Constitution, the power to control interstate trade between states and trade with foreign countries. But intrastate trade should still be handled within the state, intrastate versus interstate. And then the amendment process. 13 out of 13 states needed to amend the Articles of Confederation, and Rhode Island never allowed it. What a punk. Now, 2/3 of Congress plus 3/4 of states can amend our Constitution today, and that's why we've had 27, technically 17, not including the Bill of Rights. And so it doesn't happen often in 250 years, but it can happen. All right, let's get some final analogies. Goldilocks scenario. Think of King George in Great Britain as a unitary structure, too hot, too tyrannical, too abusive, one person in charge, and that power flows from that one person, no one else. No other state or local governments really have authority. They always answer to that unitary power. Too hot. We went to the Confederate system or confederal system. Too cold, too weak. There was no centralizing power to help organize and keep stability. So too cold. And then we move with the Constitution, because the Confederate one was the Articles of Confederation, moved to the Constitution, the federal system, which gives the federalism, right? Sharing of power between the state and federal government. And it is just right. Perfect. But messy. All right, and then also know the teacup scenario. House of Representatives is hot, chaotic, lots of fire, legislative making process. It goes, right? It's got some energy versus the cool, calm, collected, professional Senate. House of Reps, Senate, different, designs. House of Reps only serves 2-year terms before going up for re-election, and the Senate serves 6. So very much designed on purpose the way they did it. And to connect all the dots to the founding principles, think natural rights, they were violated because of the 3/5 compromise. Life, liberty, happiness, that's natural rights, and allowing slaves to even exist and for them to count 3/5 of a person violated that foundational principle from the Declaration of Independence from Thomas Jefferson, who stole it from John Locke. Contradiction. Popular sovereignty is twisted and bent a little, right? Really bent because of the electoral college system. The elite system took some of our popular sovereignty away. Social contract, that is the U.S. Constitution. Social contract equals the U.S. Constitution. It's the New Deal, the deal we agreed to. And then limited government. Think limited government, in order to have it, you must require protections of our liberties, our civil liberties, our freedoms of. And what did that? The Bill of Rights, your first 10 amendments, your freedom of speech, religion, protest, assembly, petition, all that's there. Press, first one. Second one is your right to bear arms. And in this world, it's firearms. Third one's no courting of soldiers in my home. Fourth one is no illegal search or seizure of my property or home without a court order warrant, right? The fifth one's dealing with your, what? I have the right to remain silent, and so forth and so on. And you can keep going through all five, the first five and then the next five, all 10. 10 protections, 10 amendments. All right, final tip here, your boss tip. Remember, it's all about power in this constitutional convention, all about power. So ultimately, they're trying to decide who has it, who has the power, how it's shared, how that power is shared, and then ultimately who should be left out of the power, or should no one be left out, right? So those are ultimately the decisions that had to be made. Who has it, how do we share it, and who's left out? All right, lock in, study hard. I'll see you tomorrow. Peace.